Well, hello there, LinkedIn. I'm here live. I took a little break and didn't do anything last week. I don't believe. Now the weeks start to blend, and so now I'm not even sure if I did, but I don't think so. So I am here today with the beautiful and just wonderful Renee Smith. She is part of the Leadership with Heart community, actually episode number 51. And I one day I'm just sitting here going, who should I have on the show next? And boom, I don't know why she just popped in my head. And I do think, again, it's because I wanted to be talking more, continue to have the conversation around humanness in the workplace and love in the workplace and care in the workplace. And this is something that you all hear me talk and write about a lot. And Renee is in that very similar track. Right now, she is the Director of Workplace Transformation for the Governor's Results Office in Washington. And she also is the founder and CEO of Human Workplaces, Make Work More Human. And I just have so much, I feel like there's so much alignment between what we do and what we talk about here. And I think there just can't be enough of us talking about this. So I'm excited to have you here.
Good morning. It's great to see you. It's been a while, and it's fun to talk about this, and important and timely.
So I met Renee. We were at there was Humans First, which is Mike Vacanti, the movement that's taking the world now, and he invited both of us to speak in an event. And I had to. It was like an in and out proposition for me. I had to go in and be like, "See ya," and I really regretted it, and I didn't get to spend as much time with the group and with the people who were there. And then I got an opportunity to do it again in Denver, and I was like, "I'm gonna be there from the beginning to the very end to make sure that I could engage with the people." And it's just a part of what fills me up. And so, and I know that's the same way for you, Renee. So what are you up to? Because I mean, number one, I've been seeing you, posting here and there on LinkedIn. And you're like, oh, I'm in Africa or whatever. You're in different places. I'm in here. So tell me a little bit more about your travels, like kind of towards that last few 6 months of last year. I'm curious.
Yeah, I have been able to take some time off from my job with the state and on personal time, do some travel so gosh, where was I? I was in Ottawa, in Doha, Qatar, in Barcelona, in Lisbon, in Reykjavik, and in Copenhagen, and then in Kentucky to round it off in Kentucky, and just sharing the Make Work More Human message, with folks everywhere. And so some of those places I held human workplace gatherings, and oops, there goes the fire. And some of those places, we're real alive in time. So some of those places I held a human workplace gatherings, and in some of those places I was speaking and just sharing the research that I've done and the message of how important it is that we decrease fear and increase essentially love in the workplace. And it was such a, it was an awesome experience. It was a beautiful experience to be able to do that in so many different settings and so many different cultures. When I was in Ottawa, it was with government employees from across Canada. In Doha, it was with mostly public works engineers and construction managers from across the Middle East who work from all over, really, who work in Qatar. And in Barcelona, local folks, and the same in Copenhagen, local business folks. And the same in Reykjavik. So that just like a whole variety of experiences. Yeah. And universally, I really have not run into anyone yet who says, no, really scare me to spitless, and I'll do better work if you scare me. Universally, people want to feel cared about in there, and to feel secure and like they belong and they matter when they go to work. Go figure, So it's universal, culture to culture. So. It might, it shows up differently. There's different language, different norms around that, different nuances, but the essential core is the same.
Now, when you're talking about some of the research, how was that? How did you do the research? Was it just through like doing focus groups in different areas? Was it just in Washington? I'm curious to know where your research is at.
So the initial research that I did was it was 50 individual research interviews where I asked people to tell me stories about times when they felt afraid at work and then times when they felt loved at work. And, we dug into each of those stories and, what happened in each of those, what the impacts were on them and on them on their work and on their, their customers, perhaps their private lives, their physical bodies, and what those experiences meant to them. And I collected those stories and took them away to dig in to understand what they were saying. And it became incredibly clear just how damaging fear is and how beneficial it is when we feel essentially loved. And people interpreted that word in all kinds of ways. They would say, well, I felt loved when I was respected in this situation, or when I experienced kindness in this way, or, took the forms of respect, trust, kindness, empathy, compassion, inclusion, appreciation, sometimes courage. And so lots of different forms, but all having the root back in love. And so did that research and got really clear on what people were saying and began to share about that. And then subsequently in the workshops that I do, we dive into people's stories and people have a chance to explore their own stories. And, literally now hundreds and hundreds of people over the last couple of years. I think I did a count the other day. I spoke inside the state of Washington 61 times last year, and I don't know how many outside the state. So approaching about 100 times last year, I would guess.
Nice.
So yeah, just there's a lot of evidence, a lot of people's lived experience. And when, you hold up the mirror of someone else's experience and say, here's what the research showed, and people, identify with the stories that other people have told, and they have their own stories. And pretty soon people are not feeling alone. They're not feeling like, oh God, it's just me in this, in this crazy situation. In fact, other people are experiencing similar kinds of things, on the negative side and respond the same way. And maybe that's not okay. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with me. And on the, on the positive side, people can point to situations where they really have felt like they could do their best work because they could relax, their shoulders dropped, they weren't waking up in the middle of the night stressed, they were feeling like they could say what needed to be said, or share that crazy idea that turned into something, or just, confront a tough situation. That they could do those things because they knew that they were accepted. So, yeah. So
I love it.
Yeah. So that's essentially the foundation of the work. And then there's been, so many different avenues of exploring that, from workshops and so on, writing and speaking. And then these human workplace gatherings that have become their own thing over the last two years and a couple months.
And so tell us a little bit more about that. I'm very curious because, of course, I haven't attended one yet. I will at one point.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So what happened was some of the research that I did in groups where I had people interviewing each other. Most of them I did in one-on-one where I was interviewing, but some of them were group workshops, and people would interview each other, learn their stories, tell each other's stories to the group. We would analyze those stories together. And one of the groups had such a powerful day. It was a whole day long experience. And they didn't want to leave at the end of the day on a Friday. They were lingered for another half hour, and they named themselves the Love Squad. And they wanted T-shirts, and then they wanted to get together again. And I said, well, sure, yeah, we can get together again. Good idea. And so that was December of 2017. We held the first human workplace gathering in Olympia, Washington, and we had 20 people show up at a mailing list of 50. And now in Olympia, we regularly have average is like 60 to 80 people that show up at a time, about a third new every time, and the mailing lists are about 1,700. And this Friday we have 150 registered and more than 50 on the waiting list to attend the gathering. That's actually on the Black Experience. We're partnering with a Black Community Business Resource Group in the state of Washington. So I think it's going to be a really powerful. It's being hosted by someone from that group, and Megan Matthews, and so it's a lot of dialogue, and they're collecting stories to share. And so the format, though, what we learned in holding these human workplace gatherings is that it's sort of like, I like to say, it's not a meeting, it's not a workshop, it's not a training, but it is a gathering. And that's like to signal that we're doing something different here in the workplace. And we're not bringing experts to teach. It's not somebody talking at the group from the front of the room, but instead we do a lot of investment in relationship building with whoever comes. And again, like a third new every time. So it's always like, this group that's here today, how do we bring those folks together and help them to connect meaningfully, because that meaningful connection is essential to the learning that they're going to do together. So it's a meaningful connection. And then The next piece, the topic of the day, which it could be on trust, it could be on empathy, it could be on the science of awe, which we hold outdoors. You name it, different topics related to what it means to be human at work. So there's usually just a tad bit of teaching, just like a smidge, not too much, because people don't need to have the whole library on everything we know about something. They need to have just enough to, like, a bite of the apple, right? And then a chance to really chew that bite and digest it and be nourished by it. And so, we try to limit it to no more than 15 minutes of teaching in the 2 hours. And the rest of the time is then spent reflecting, dialoguing, practicing, skill building, thinking about application in conversation and so on, and learning together in community. And what's come out of that it's become clear that part of what needs to happen is that we need to build these essential human skills, or we need to have practice with using these essential human skills that are necessary. People sometimes call them soft skills. I like to call them essential human skills.
I know that drives me nuts. Don't say soft.
No, they are the stuff.
Super hard.
Yeah, they're hard, and they're the stuff of life. They're the stuff of organizational success. So I don't know why we would call them soft or dismiss them. But people need to know that they're important. They need to know that they're welcome, and then they need practice, because for many people, those have been shunned in the workplace. So we, give people actual lived experience in the room, in those gatherings, practicing those skills. So they're practicing listening from the heart, for example, or, expressing, an authentic emotion, or holding space for someone else, just listening to someone else express their experience, or, making eye contact. I mean, that's a really micro behavior, but being able to hold eye contact when you're with a colleague, or if you're a leader with a team member who's receiving hard news or having a difficult time, it's those little micro behaviors that people need practice at, and to know that those are going to help them be more successful in building community and organizations, and bringing their humanity forward, so that people, again, feel loved and connected, and can do their best work. So
I love that idea of, like, tooling people up in a real way, where it's not, again, not in a guided, teaching all the time, or having to go to some workshop. And of course, I do workshops, so let's be clear on that, right? But this idea of the realness, the humanity that exists just between two people connecting to one another. And so, I do research that's different from yours, to the extent that, the work I do in the voice of the employee space, it makes me privy to employee engagement comments. So free written comments from employees related to the things that they love, the things they'd like to see changed inside their workplaces. And obviously, a lot of the things that you talk about are the things that show up. And it's not a cookie cutter. So that's the other thing I'd like to say, is that there are some things that are really foundational and just exist. And I see it no matter which survey, which company I'm dealing with. And there are those that come some nuances. So for example, this idea of inclusion or inclusiveness, it sometimes shows up in a big way. Maybe it's a different, like, it's from year to year. And it depends on the leadership that's in place, the culture that's in place, the policies, procedures that are in place. There's all these different things that are I guess, providing that level of depth to why it might be 1 year over another, or why it's one company over another. And it's what's so fun is in the digging into, the why, like, why are there differences here? But then, like you're talking about, having this, like, these focus groups with a group of employees, and going deeper, saying, well, here are some of the things that you and your coworkers said. So can we go deeper? Tell us what that means. And then what would the leadership of this organization tactically do? What would they actually do to change your experience in this regard? What would they do? And then it's trying to gather all of those things up. And then my job is to kind of take it back to leaders to say, listen, here's what you need to do. And then talking to people like you, again, on this show, people who are leading people, or, some people are like CEOs of large organizations. And I'm talking to them, and it's like, when you combine here are the things that we need and want, and here are the things that we actually do as people who are, I only choose people who are more emotionally intelligent. So the trick there is that you're not going to come on this show if you're not someone who has a reputation for being more emotionally intelligent, right? Either I've chosen you or someone has referred you.
Right.
And in that case, because you're not perfect, because none of us are, we're all human, but you are someone who exercises more of those emotionally intelligent characteristics, let's say, then we kind of sniff test it. Like, okay, employees, here's what you want, and leaders, here's what you're doing, or maybe not always. And that's what we highlight on the show, the times when we weren't kind of this perfect caricature of a leader. Like, we have all these other things, and it makes us great. It's the greatness. It's all of that stuff that's in there, the humanness, the not being perfect, that actually makes us so brilliant, particularly our willingness to share it. And I love your idea of these exchanges that are carved out, that are not curated, or like, I guess, you say, here we can have a discussion, but in the end, I'm assuming you're just letting the discussion go. Does it just flow as it presents itself?
Yeah, there's definitely some curation to the experience, some thought around, we're going to inject a little bit of information, and then give people a series of experiences, practices, skill building, chance to dialogue. But it's amazing. We know that we're doing well with it when the conversation flows, and brilliance just comes from the room, and people who have things that need to be said, who have insight, who can speak from their years of experience as an employee or as a leader. We get people from all levels of organizations coming together. So that there's that. And then, I think one of the things that often comes forward is that when people, especially I will say, when folks from HR or in leadership kind of get excited about this idea that we're going to make a workplace more human, oftentimes immediately what happens is we go to, what are all the structures? What are the programs we can make? What are the structures we can put in place? What are all the usual organizational design levers that we can pull? And so, we think strategy, and we got our processes and policies, and when we think about our hiring and how we're developing people and our reward systems and what we're celebrating and all of those things and more. And all of that's good. Like, we need that. But usually when we're in the room having these conversations, people aren't saying, gosh, I wish they would, change this process or have more, some policy. I mean, and there needs to be that, but that's not the moment that things fall apart. Where things fall apart is where we've got all that, and then in the moment somebody, is not able to be human with their team member or with their employee, and whether they can't be with them, they can't take 10 minutes to sit down with them when they've just had a personal crisis, and just give them the time and hold that space for them. There's all kinds of little decisions that are made, or little interactions where that the human skill to be with another person well in that moment is a make or break moment for all the policy and process and structural and reward system. All of the systems will be made or broken in that moment of interaction. And we've got to, help people get better at those moments. They've got to know, first of all, that it's okay, to be human in those moments, to bring their humanity to those moments, that they're not supposed to be hard. That, in fact, we want you to, to invest in people and to be with people. There's so many people who don't realize that, and who have been told over the years, and now you got to bring your tough self, bring your badass self to work, and because you can't trust those people, and you got to really ride them, and that I think that our greater risk isn't that we're going to let somebody scoot by, we're going to be a little too soft and somebody's going to scoot by. That is not our greater risk these days. Our greater risk is that we're alienating people, and that people are shutting down because they're scared to death to speak up or to ask a question, because it's going to be misinterpreted, it's going to be manipulated, they're going to be seen in a bad light. We're just losing so much. That is our greater risk. Mm-hmm. So, I'm passionate about turning people loose on that idea that bringing your humanity is a good choice.
Well, it's interesting. I think as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about a circumstance where I was leading a particular team member. She was a manager, I was director, and we were in a group meeting. I entered the group meeting. I don't usually attend this particular group meeting, but I attended this meeting to share customer feedback with the group. And I've kind of always played that role where I'm sharing either customer feedback or employee feedback, and people are like, and they take it personal. They think I'm holding the opinion myself, when I'm just in fact the messenger or the catalyst to deliver that message. So I go in and I have to deliver this message to this group of people. that it impacts like how long they're gonna be at work that day, like all those things, right? And this particular team member goes like way off the rails. I mean, she just, who is that? And just goes way off. And I'm like, ooh, I just said, ooh. And I let her do her thing because I realized in that moment that she needed to do her thing. Now, after the fact, people after the meeting came to me and said, oh my gosh, you are like, I've never seen anybody have as much emotional self-control as you have. And what I said is, number one, I think she needed to do it. Number two, I did talk to her after the point because I do believe in making sure that people have their dignity when they leave a room interacting with me. And so, but if I were just to go and plunge back at her in the middle of all of this stuff, I think it would make anything better. But it did suit me well to go back after and go, what was happening there? What exactly was taking place? And I had that conversation with her, and we were able to kind of lockstep. Listen, if we have an issue like that going forward, just pull me aside and ask me. Or, it just so happened I couldn't talk to her ahead of time. It came in, I needed to deliver it. But those are the kind of interactions and exchanges that happen all the time. And sometimes people aren't. I mean, and it is human for me to be like, well, damn it, and just go off back on her. So human isn't just like this pretty, well thought out, structured interaction system that we have, right? It is that stuff where I can't hold my emotions back because you just pissed me the heck off.
Right.
And so, we have to get to the point where, because in that space, I can guarantee you that would not have been okay. Right. It just would not have been. I was the manager. I was the leader, and I was probably the more senior person in the entire meeting. And for me to just be like, and peel back on her like she peeled on me, really speaking to the customer, I understood it wasn't about me.
Right.
I understood that's the reason why I didn't do it. But there are a lot of people who don't do it. And what do we do in those situations? Because like if you're watching it, because I've done this before, I've seen two people go at it. They're on my team. And again, I don't go and stop it right now. I don't go crazy, but I go, well, we're going to hold this aside. And then I talk to the person offline and go, that was not you. And I'm concerned. What was happening there? Because I know that wasn't you. And so that's how I would do it. But some people may say, well, human is also me not doing that. Right.
Yeah. So, we're going to have all different kinds of different versions of ourselves, and there's going to be conflict, and we're going to get messy. We're messy people. And can we circle back around? Can we, when it's, hopefully when we have the presence to be able to sort of inquire and be curious, this is out of character, or, what's happening here? I want to know more. And to be concerned about a person that is manifesting in a way that's like not who they are. Yeah, accessing that curiosity. Now, if that is who they are, that's a whole other thing, right? And I guess one of the things I want to say is that I'm not advocating that we should like allow for bad behavior or or just like let poor performers just kind of get away with stuff, because that is not love. That's not love for them. That's not love for the rest of the people in the organization. It's not love for the customer. We have to deal with things, but with dignity. And when we blow it, when there isn't dignity, and then it's it's about forgiveness and walking through that process of healing rifts and repairing trust. And but we being willing to dig into that, being willing to be together in the mess of our humanness and like working on it, and not sort of an avoidance mode. It's that's what it's all about. So
it's so true. I feel like when I am speaking to all of you, the leadership of the heart community, when I'm speaking to you, and I ask that whole question about when was a time when you were not the best version of you, but when you see yourself in the mirror and you think, this is not my best self, what was it? And, talking through that, sometimes there's just healing in that, even in just our conversation of talking through, what it felt like, and in the end though, the message is, this is not about perfection. We are not reaching a destination. This is a journey. We're doing it together. And it's by doing this and people kind of listening and watching, kind of like we talk about the gatherings, where all the learnings comes in. It's the practice. It's in practice. How does this look? Not just theoretical, how does this look, but how does it actually look? And what were you feeling when you came out of it? I think all of these interactions are, this is where the beauty's at. I don't know. I know it fills you up because you do the work too. It just completely fills me up to do that deep work where I wasn't my best. I was a little yucky. I was showing up in a way that wasn't just fully, I guess, present. Like you were saying, I was somewhere else. It was all about me. All of those things though are levels of humanity that it's so interesting, because I hear there are other people that talk about humanness in a way that really is, let's like act better. Let's always be like but it's also like, let's be more human. We aren't better, and we're trying to struggle through it together, right? That's the important message.
Yeah, and what I learned in my research was that in teams where there was a strong sense of belonging and acceptance, like a fundamental floor of belonging and acceptance that everyone was standing on, that those things could happen, and and there would be repair, right? Someone could blow it, or there could be disagreement, there could be good, healthy conflict. Someone could have a bad day, and they would be brought back in. They either, depends on the situation. Either people would bring themselves back in and repair and apologize, or others would, reach out and bring them back in and be curious and help, heal that rift. But that all happens on a fundamental foundation of a sense of belonging and trust and care. And so when we have that, we can, I don't always like to use the analogy of family, because that can that draws up negativity for some people. It's just a metaphor. But, in the sense of having a fundamental commitment to each other, if we think about family in that way, that's really what that's trying to say, right? That, we're gonna dig into it, and we're not gonna let go. We're not going to just give up, but we've got each other because there's something deeper here we're working on, and we've made a way together to be together that's profound and meaningful. And the people that do that, they talked about doing the best work of their lives, their customers receiving the greatest service from them, coming up with higher quality solutions and new innovations, and that all was on that fundamental foundation that allowed for that. So yeah, I think you're right. There's it's a full spectrum of humanity, but hopefully from that agreement that we're starting from this place of care for each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I want to say hi to Andrea, because I don't know if you're still on there, but thanks for joining, Andrea. It's Clow or Chloe. I always do this messing up names, but
hey, Andrea.
Welcome. And then Scott Schufel, love the people movement. Just read Simon Sinek's The Infinite Game. And I actually I have the book too, and I started it. And then I kind of, like always, this is the human side of me. I started it, and then I had to start something else, right? So I have to still finish that. Yeah. Sharon Barnett, all about respect, inclusion, and letting people be a part of the company's stories was a good one. Tim Duhamel, I think this is what it is. This is great learning. Human essential skills is a great term to better brand soft skills. So true. Yeah. And then Andrea said she participated, it looks like, in one of the gatherings, and it's a great place for practicing human essential skills, which is great. I love it. Learning, never stop, regardless of your level or experience, success or challenges. I stand by you never lose, you win or learn from a personal and business perspective. And it's true. That is so true. The learning, because if you don't accept the learning, then you're going to keep doing it. And then what's the value of the experience if you're not there? So I definitely appreciate it. And those who are joining in, I appreciate that. Ask questions too. So for those who are watching right now and listening in, are there any questions that you have of either Renee or I in this space of human workplace, and trying to, show more care, more love, more connectedness at work? If there are any questions you have, please do pose those in the comments. So Renee is all over the world now doing stuff in the human workplace, and she's the founder of that company. And I'm just so excited to have her be a part. She's episode 51 of Leadership at Heart Community, Leadership at Heart podcast. So you should go back and listen to some of the stuff that we talked about. Her journey is really unique and intriguing. And even, again, with the work that we do in this space, people might see us as teachers, as educators, as guides in this space, but we're not perfect, right? We are trying our very best to lead ourselves. And while we're leading ourselves, we are trying our very, very best to model to others, and to also be led by others. So to follow as well. So keep that in mind when you are watching any of these lives that I'm doing. It's not that and even in the show and any of the work I do, it's not about highlighting perfection. This is about highlighting people who get it, meaning they're trying really hard to improve on this journey. They're including other people while they're doing it, but they're sharing. They're courageous enough to share along the way when they really just, weren't all that great. And I have more stories than I even want to share here on that. But but I have shared them, and it is what it is. Now, as a leader in my home of 4 kids, and Renee also has 4 children as well, I'm always having to make, interesting decisions. I'm doing things that kids are like, Mom, why'd you just do that? And so they are questioning my leadership, and you have to be okay with being questioned, right?
That's true. Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's even young people, right? All my children are grown, but young people they'll hold up the mirror for us, and I mean that's a great source of maturing. It's just living in a household with teenagers or children of any age.
Yes, exactly. All of them will do that to me, and I feel like my greatest learnings are with my kids, and but I think the idea of learning is really critical. So.
Yeah.
Yay. So what's next now on the calendar for you? Where are you going next? What are you up to?
So I'm going to No Longer Virtual. I'm going to see you there in March. We'll both be at No Longer Virtual in Chicago. Super excited about that. Kevin Strauss and I are designing a session on emotional health. And so a lot of what I've described as far as a little bit of teaching and a little bit of teaching and a lot of practice will be part of what we bring to that session, and helping people just practice methods for building emotional health. So really fun to do that with you. And lots more human workplace gatherings coming, and in conversation with people in other places in the world about spreading that. And so
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, I'll join one at some point, because I just want to see how it is, with Humans First, and now I'm No Longer Virtual. Yeah. I love the little micro communities that are kind of all over the place, just doing good work of trying to connect more with people, right? Because that's in the end, it ends up being a lot about that. On even with No Longer Virtual, see that it's yes, we're there to learn, but for me personally, it's about the human connection and the deep care for the people that are there and them for me, and how we're able to support one another. And we're not part of a family, meaning like the bloodline, the biological family, but boy, we are a family, and we stick with each other. So I think whenever you are, whoever's in there listening right now and watching, when you ever are in a potential place where you can create more of that connection, be a part of a group like this, Humans First, No Longer Virtual, Human Workplaces, and there are a plethora of others, jump in there and do it, because that's where we feel like this work we do, and even all of the promotion and stuff that we do out on LinkedIn, it really starts to mean something, because then the people that respond to us, we feel like we know them, we care for them. When we see something that's posted out there, we're like, yay, Renee, yay, right? Because we know them. And it's different than just being like a person in the universe. It's someone that you've actually connected with. So do that. Reach across the keyboard, do Zoom calls, do whatever you have to do, but try to create that connection and be okay with being human.
I had just a lovely experience with that last week, and got on the phone, not on the phone, on a Zoom call with someone, and got to hear her research. And I was like, it was such an inspiring way to start the day. It made me think, this is like, there's enough people in my network. I could like invite a different person each week, like to just have a Zoom call to just learn about their work. It was completely inspiring. As it is to talk with you and others in the community, but she had work that I hadn't heard about before and didn't know about, and so we saw new connections and possibilities. But even beyond that, it was just joyful to sit in the presence of someone who is in their element, sharing about about their passion and the work that she has done. So I recommend that as just like an injection of learning about some new topic and connecting with a new person. But it was inspiring. So
I try to make a habit of that too. Well, let's go out there and connect everybody. Let's connect on a human level. It's okay not to be just like, we don't have to be perfect, right? This is a journey. But this has been great. You're amazing. I could it's like having a cup of cocoa and sitting with you in your fireplace at a cafe, and it's just fun. I'm glad we were able to do this, and I am very excited to see you in Chicago and No Longer Virtual. We are going to have a blast, and hopefully you'll come every year, because you just won't believe how amazing everybody is.
I'm looking forward to it, and as soon as there'll be some more to share about what we're doing with the human workplace gatherings and hosting and tools and things that we're going to be putting together. And so maybe a little bit later this year, we can talk about that one. If I'm ready to tell more, but there's some things in the offing that will be great to kind of spread the goodness. So
awesome. Well, okay, everybody, thanks for joining, and hopefully this was a good value to you. See you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.